specialize in verbally and physically abusing people. And I made $500 for 40 minutes worth of work doing that. And these clients were all men. I felt really worthless in my life, Sally. I felt like nobody loved me and I had no value.
This is David Sterry. David, what the heck is a chicken? And let me explain. David has written a book called Chicken. What's a chicken?
A chicken is an underage sex worker.
Middle-class family?
Suburban, nice. I was loved as a child, wasn't abused, wasn't, you know, beaten with a coat hanger or anything.
You were not?
No, no, no. I had very loving parents.
But what happened to this idea that whenever I talk
parents went through a terrible divorce, really traumatic. And I sort of got lost, fell through the cracks. And at that time, I decided to go to college early, and I was a bit of an unruly teenager, not unusual, but when I got to Hollywood, which is where the college was, I discovered they didn't have dormitories. So I was I just felt so alone, you know, and so miserable, like, where's my family? And I felt very isolated. And
how much money did you have?
$27.
Oh, you remember that?
I remember it very, very well.
$27.
This college, it was on a hill overlooking Hollywood, and I sort of wandered down into Hollywood, and I ended up in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater, looking at Marilyn Monroe's handprints. And a man started up a conversation with me. He was so nice. He was such a nice guy. And I felt very alone, and he offered me a steak dinner, and I was very hungry. And I would advise everyone here, if someone offers you a steak dinner, don't go.
Oh, dear.
And I went to his apartment, and I ate the steak, and I immediately passed out.
You were drugged.
I believe I was drugged. I don't have proof of that, but I believe I was, yes. And when I awoke, he was raping me. And it was the worst pain, Sally, that I have ever felt in my life. I've cracked my head open and broken bones, but this was a pain that was not only physical, but went right to the very core of me. And I managed to escape. I was young and you know, an athletic person, and I managed to escape. And I wandered through the night of Hollywood as Saturday morning was dawning, and I vowed not to cry, you know, and I was trying to be strong. And I happened to meet that day a man who was a manager of a fried chicken place who hired me. Well, it turns out this was his front for procuring runaways and underage kids. And he started me into the life. And he got me, my first job was with a very wealthy woman in a Beverly Hills mansion. What was interesting about this woman was she was perfectly put together, but there was something, you know, not quite there about her. And this kind of vacancy I noticed a lot in the world of industrial sex. And she wanted me to, my nickname for her, she was my first client, and she turned me on to a lot of business. It is a word-of-mouth business, and between...
You mean this woman at lunch would tell another woman at lunch, and they would use male prostitutes?
Yes. And it is
What's industrial sex?
That's my term for the world of sex for money. Industrial sex, that's what I call it. Eventually, I came to specialize in verbally and physically abusing people. And I made $500 for 40 minutes worth of work doing that. And these clients were all men. Now, to them it was sexual. To me it wasn't sexual at all. It was just, you know how sometimes when you have a boss that you'd like to tell off and say mean things to? Well, that's what I did, and I got paid a lot of money to do it. And these men were all very powerful. I worked with a judge who, he came out in his judge's robe, and underneath he had diapers on. And you can imagine that, I mean, I had to detach myself from this so much. On the one hand, I was thinking, well, this is the sickest, weirdest thing I've ever thought. But on the other hand, I felt really worthless in my life, Sally. I felt like nobody loved me and I had no value.
Okay, wait a minute, Dave. wait, let me take a break and we'll come right back. One of the things I've got to find out is how you ever got out of this.
Next.
I could have worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
How did you get out of it?
I snapped. I totally lost it. When I did this to this man, I could never go back to working again because I had broken every law in this business.
We're talking with David Sterry, who is a former teenage prostitute. David, how did you get out of it?
One of these jobs was with a man, and he was trying to be real cute, like we were going to have sex or something, and I was very clear that that's not what I was there for. And he had me come over and put my head on his chest, and I felt this tugging on my head, and I looked up and he had my hair in his mouth. Really, and it just like, I snapped. I felt a loathing, and you know when they say people see red? I saw red. I totally lost it, and I destroyed this whole man's apartment, and I beat him. I mean, I'm ashamed in a certain sense to say that, but it was my subconscious's way of getting out, because every time I did a job, I would have a terrible wave of black depression come over me, and I would vow never to work again. So when I did this to this man, I could never go back to working again because I had broken every law there was to break in this business. You can't do that and expect to work anymore. And somewhere inside of me, that was my way to get out. I couldn't actually make that decision myself because I was so damaged.
But you got out.
But I got out.
You've written a book.
Yes.
On Satchel Paige.
Yes, yes.
You've written this book. You've been an athlete. What
Yes.
kind?
I was a soccer player.
Okay.
I was a marriage counselor.
A marriage counselor. You've been
5 years after servicing women sexually, I was
a marriage counselor.
I was a marriage counselor.
You were
yes.
an actor?
Yes, I worked on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith, and who, by the way, is one of the nicest men you'll ever meet.
What other jobs have you had?
I was a soda jerk. I was the master of ceremonies at Chippendale's male strip club. In the 1980s, you know, when it was the hottest show in New York, right?
We would always have them on.
Yes, I've seen them on your show.
But
yes.
Did you turn out to be gay or straight or in between?
I was always straight. And eventually, this employment agency was who I worked for. They were, their specialty was underage sex workers. And the man who interviewed me, my employment counselor, if you will, he kept insisting, asking me, will you work with men, will you work with men? If I'd said yes to that, I could have worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's demand for that.
For a male prostitute from other men?
For a boy, yes.
For a boy?
Yes.
Okay. I would think that if you told men that you were a male prostitute and you made love to various women, most men, not thinking it through, would think they had died and gone to heaven with that kind of job.
Sally, it's funny you say that because I get that reaction all the time. I tell guys this and they go, oh man, that sounds so hot, man. Honey, I can sign me up, man.
And to women, it probably is yuck, but to men,
well, it's fascinating, but yes, a little yucky. And I try to explain to these men, there are different kinds of sex workers. There are people who make informed decisions. This is the job I'd like. And there are survival sex workers, and that's what I was.
Did you ever finish college?
Of course. I went, interestingly enough, soon after I left the life, I moved. My mother took me back into her home, God love her, and sort of saved my life. And then I went, at the same time I was doing this, I was in college. I was studying poetry and philosophy, and I had a girlfriend, and then I finished up, then I went to Portland, Oregon, and went to Reed College, which is a fantastic school.
It is a very good school.
And graduated there 3 years later.
Now, let me tell you that when he talks about what the women want him to do, I did not ask him these questions. They are in the book. You will have to take that on for yourself, because it is daytime, and there are people watching.
We can't go into too many details.
We can't go into the details. Chicken. Okay? We'll be right back. We have copies, by the way, here. The book is called Chicken by David Sterry, S-T-E-R-R-Y. Thank you, and if you forget that and you need any information, all you have to do is join us on our website, sallyjr.com. See you down the road.